welcome to another Bald Explorer live stream. I'm Richard Vobes. It's 4 o'clock on the 29th of June 2020, and we're back again. I'm just looking for my glasses case so I can rest the book on it. Hello to Adrian TurboStream. Lovely to see you. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. We're going to carry on with our reading. We're on chapter 27. I buy stock and seed, with the story of a Norfolk farm from 1939, I think, or 38, 37, whenever it is. Afternoon to John Morris and to the lovely Julia. Thank you very much. I hope you're all well and doing good things this afternoon. I've been out this morning up to have a look at a piece of land that used to be this wonderful piece of downland, rare bit of downland that was springy underfoot and full of insects and butterflies, trees, wildflowers, and a joyous picnic area for people to go. And in 1979 it was ploughed up by a Dutchman coming in, and it's a huge mile-long field. Just think about that, a mile-long field now of monoculture. And I went there because I've been reading a book called The Theft of the Countryside by Marion Sherwood, and it's an insight to what was going on in the after years of the war. It was written in 1980, so it's behind the times now, and I don't know exactly what the turnaround has been since then, as we discovered that we have ploughed up much of England's heritage and turned it into monoculture. Lots of good afternoons. Andrew Norris says, I have a video and a theme for tonight's discussion, and I'll send in half an hour. Fantastic. Please do. That would be great. I have got an idea, but if you've got one, even better. It's a windy old day in the Shire. I cycled to Waisley Hills and back, 17 miles. Good for you. Hello from California, from John Buck. Hello to you. To Lee Lawson, hello. And from Morton Lewis, hello. From Broiling, Madrid. I think that might be boiling, but broiling is probably good too. And to Tim Williams, hi Richard, just sent a video in. Yeah, I noticed a number of videos coming in on the WeTransfer today. I was thinking, oh, maybe there won't be any, and then suddenly there was a flurry, so that's all good. Hello Paul, says Kevin Smith. What is the title of the Countryside book, please, Richard? There's some. I've got a whole load of new books coming, but this one in particular is called The Theft of the Countryside. It's in the, damn it, I left it in the other room, by Marion Sherwood, Shoard, Sherwood or Sherwood, something like that. The weird thing was actually she's got another book which I'm eager to read, which has come, called This Land is Our Land, and that was written in 1987 originally, with an update in 1997, which looks at who owns the land and the rights of it. Quite a huge tome. And there's another one that she has also written, which I forget the date of, but again, I think it's around a similar sort of time. The Right to Roam. There's been a number of books on the right to roam. I think it's all about the freedom of our countryside. I've frozen. Can you tell me, it's murderous. One can't do anything until sundown. Oh, the heat. Yes, I bet. did we freeze just then? Did we? At my end was just like I had a. On here, I get a monitor showing me what the stream is like, and it was just frozen up. I just slightly worried whether it's doing that, but if somebody could let me know, then that would be great. That you're actually getting a good stream. Stream frozen here. Okay, now, yeah, we did freeze, but all good again. All right, okay. Keep an eye on that. My son is in, but I think he's having a lie down because he's got a night shift, and that's the only people using the internet. So hopefully it's okay. Otherwise, I'll have to restart the router. Right, thank you very much. Okay, we're all good. Roland Millwood, hello to you. Audrey, hello to you as well. And Ed Loud, marvellous. Okay, so, well, 6 minutes in, I even started, but maybe we needed to just get past that slight hiccup there. Chapter 27, I buy stock and seed is where we are. I enjoyed ploughing. It was pleasant to be among the gulls weaving and interweaving whitely behind me. As I turned my head over my shoulder, I liked watching the coiled white roots of bindweed come up with the furrow and be buried again with the cut roots of thistles. I liked the feel, the shear of the soil on the mouldboards, the power of the tractor bursting up the earth. But after 8 or 9 hours of this, I was glad, in early January evenings, to take the tractor downhill to the cart shed about dusk, first stiffly recovering from layers of soil pressed to the steel wheels with their 4-inch spuds or teeth. I made it a rule to clean the wheels every time on the grass of the pasture leading off the arable, for the soil under the grass was light and sandy, and the wads of clay spread about would help to improve the grazing instead of lying mud on the new roads. When we had a spare day or two, we got to the concrete mixer again and laid about 25 tons of concrete. I laid bits of broken tiles on the surface while it was soft to prevent slipping horses. After Christmas, we moved into the cottages, and 4 or 5 men cleared up the garden, which was littered with all the rubbish of the demolition and the building operations. All the chalky soil dug back from the walls of the cottages, 25 tons or more. And I had put on the garden. I had put it on the garden to stiffen the lights. I had put on the garden to stiffen the light soil, made lighter. All the chalky soil dug from the back walls of the cottages, 20 tons or more, I had put on the garden to stiffen the light soil, made lighter by the coal ashes of nearly a century. We dug up the ground, first tearing out many useless suckers with a wild plum, a non-bearing pear tree, and bushes of elderberry. We had made up the paths and the yard with clean gravel, and put up a gate and painted it white to keep the small children from running out directly to the main road on which cars and lorries were constantly passing. The place looked less desolate. Bit by bit I began to feel relief from the constant pressure of objects decadent to be made whole and sweet again. But the list of such objects was endless. The entire village life, though and standard, was based on resignation and prejudice. On the farm, the immediate problem arose: what do we do with our mangolds and Swedes? Something other than rats and rabbits ought to eat them. I wrote to the farming association I had joined and asked them to buy me some good Aberdeen Angus bullocks. No dealer would be fobbing off bad doers on me, I thought. The bullocks, costing £17 each, arrived at Welk Station from Ireland by way of Fishguard about 10 days later. Bob and I were driven in by Letitia at 6 o'clock in the darkness. Then she went home to the new cottage, where all washing up water, slops, etc. had to be carried outside, and thrown on the garden. The waterboards of the new doors leaked, and after the rain, it's funny. He is such a weird writer, because I thought he was going to talk about picking up the bullocks. That was what the sense of the paragraph was about, and then he sort of just gets so easily diverted within a paragraph. I don't think he's as good a writer as it was made to be made out. I mean, it's an interesting book, though. Right, so sorry. He went to the thing. The waterboards of the new doors leaked, and after rain, the floor was a pool of water. The new kitchen range was not properly covered in by sheet iron to cover it, and the draught was faulty, it cooked irregularly. On the day the stove roared in a northeast wind. No, that's not right. One day the stove roared in a northeast wind. Another time it burned dully. The new floor of concrete mix with red ochre colouring and expensive waterproofing powder was dusty. The bricklayers had left the two doors open at night when it was just laid, and the draught had dried it off too quickly, and trying to smooth it over they had floated it the next day, floated in inverted commas. The new windows too didn't fit in the frames. Some were warped. Truly, I had bought my experience. Well, everything just seems to be not right with this bloke. It's very odd. Bob and I walked back to the bullocks. They moved slowly, being excessively thin. I went ahead with a lantern. Bob walked behind. When we got home at 9 o'clock and put them in the meadow. Old Billy was the yardsman, receiving extra money to work on Sundays feeding them. We kept them on hay at first, with a few white turnips, lest they should sour. The hay was tough and old, and they wouldn't eat it. We had to chaff it in the barn. Even so, their condition was so poor that they scored, and one fell ill. He was having too many roots. I told Billy. The others are scoring too. The old fellow was slicing Swedes in the hand machine that I had bought at an auction, and I noticed that he threw them in with earth on. I told him the roots had to be cleaned first, but they don't take any harm from a little earth. It's good for them, he said. So I didn't interfere further. But when the scoring continued for nearly 2 weeks, I ordered him to clean the roots first, cut down the ration to very little, and to be sure to give each beast 10 pounds of chopped hay in the bins. It was difficult to talk to him, and my inexperience was a handicap. I had had a visit from one of the advisors of the Norfolk agricultural station near Norwich during the past summer, and we walked together over the farm, and I had made notes of his advice about cultivations and fertilizers. Now I wrote to him and sought his advice about bullocks. It was this advice that Billy found hard to take. He was a tired man, and I discovered later that he scarcely knew more than I did. I told him to wrap the sick bullock, which was not eating, in warm sacks, and to feed him on warm milk and pig meal. Both he and Bob informed me that such things weren't done on other farms. Billy's idea of bullocks being cured was to put it alone in a dark place near the yard with a pail of cold water. Cold water is a good tonic for a bullock. A pail of earth, they like to lick it, you know, and 1 or 2 chopped Swedes lying in a wooden box. As it got worse, I asked the vet to come out. He ordered warm sacks, warm gruel, another bullock in the box for warmth and company. The other 9 bullocks, he said, must be given no roots until they stop the dangerously exhausting scouring. Also, they should have 2 pounds each of decorticated ground nut cake every day. I don't know what decorticated means. Meanwhile, we had finished ploughing the Holland aftermath of the hay crop of 21 acres, and I went to buy some barley seed in Norwich Market. My first visit to the corn hall was bewildering, and again the hollow feeling came in me of my utter incapability of knowing about farming. The hall was filled with wooden stands like high desks, scores of them clustered with men moving all ways, smoking, talking, examining barley and oats spilled from envelopes into their palms, shaking it to level out the seed, scrutinizing it, putting it back in the envelopes, then spilling it on their palms once more. What did it all mean? One man I watched took a small instrument, opened the side metal cover, shook barley kernels into it, then closed it with pressure of the cover. Opening it, he examined the cut kernels through a magnifying glass. Bit steely, I heard him say. What do you want for it? 27 and 6, replied the farmer. The other man shook his head, emptied the cut grains on the floor, closed the cover, put the instrument on the desk. He gave back the paper bag of barley. Too much green in it. Only use to me as grinding. I'll give you 22 and 6. The farmer went away. I moved after him, and touching him on the arm, I asked if he wouldn't mind telling me what he had meant. They cut the kernels to see the colour, he replied. If it's white, it's good sample, providing the kernel is plump like a partridge's breast, and a good colour, and wrinkled, indicating ripeness. If it cuts greyish, what we call steely, it means it's got too much nitrogen. You mustn't have your land too rich for barley, you see. Oh, can you tell me what makes good malting sample, please? Regularity of growth and ripening. Much depends on the weather, of course. A proper seed bed. You see, what the maltsters want is a sample which sprouts evenly when they damp it on the malting house floor, and then there's no wastage. An uneven sample means a mixed sample, mixed ripenings, some good, others green or unripe. You've got to just cut at the right moment too. I thanked him and moved along the close-set stands. Manure merchants, insurance agencies, seed merchants, representatives of famous breweries were there, some with small attaché cases half filled with envelopes of samples they'd bought. I saw my informant trying to sell his sample to another merchant, but after he had refused to offer the 23 shillings, "I'll wait a week or two," he grinned at me, putting the packet in his overcoat pocket. At the top end of the hall I met a man who was the manager of a big farm in mid-Norfolk. He had come to see me once or twice, having read some articles I'd written in the newspaper, and offered his advice. He seemed to know everything, and I found myself unable to take in most of what he said. His idea of what I should do on the farm was so different from my plan that I could not reconcile the two ideas. Thus, he'd said to me, "Don't buy any bullocks, there's no money in fattening them these days. It costs me 9 shillings a week usually for a period of 20 weeks to fat a beast nowadays. But you've got to get rid of your roots and hay somehow, also to tread your straw into muck. So take my advice and have adjusted beasts. The owner gets them fatted, and you get the muck. Meat for manners, as they say." Adjusted, he explained, was to have someone else's bullocks, generally a dealer's, and feed them for a fixed sum a week, about 3 shillings and 6pence or 4 shillings a head. Cake would be supplied by the owner of the bullocks. All you do is look after them, and you get your adjust money and the muck. At least you're sure of 3 shillings and 6pence a head per week, provided he pays, of course. There's always the risk in farming of a man going broke and not paying, whereas if you try to fat your own beasts, you'll probably lose, even with the government subsidy. He was against sheep on the Castle Hills. Mutton will probably drop in price too, There's all the world for the big meat combines to buy from. Argentina, Australia, New Zealand. The English farmer can't compete. Calf rearing? I tried it for 2 years and lost money. Drain your meadows. It'll cost you hundreds of pounds a week, and you'll never get it back. You'll never get it back in the value of grass turned into beef or mutton. You might try pigs. They will pay. You've got a job to get this place in order economically, but I think you've got the ability. But it will be a question of if you can stick it. You find the men difficult? Every farmer does. It's the hardest part of farming. Despite his advice, I bought the 10 bullocks. If I had a fixed idea, I would set it to work. I was built that way. I wanted to start to do something, and without reasoning it out, knew that I had to buy my experience. I needed barley seed for 6 acres. Being short of capital, I'd been advised to grow that acreage the first year. The advice came from a young official on the Norfolk agricultural station. At my request, he'd come to look over the farm for me during the previous summer. He was a young Devonian, the son of a farmer who I learnt had farmed near Letitia's old home. It was one of the happiest days. It was one of the happiest walks over the farm I'd had, and from the first I felt sure that he knew the land as the sun, the rain, and the crops knew it. If only such a man were my partner, I thought. His words had the economy of natural growth. He didn't make the mistake a less sensitive man might have done of assuming that I knew nothing. He took samples of the soil of each field with a trowel and a little cloth bag, and answered simple questions with simplicity, not complexity. As an example of the expert knowledge and service county advisors' stations are giving free to their farmers, here is a copy of the report after his visit. 30th of July, 1937. Further to my visit to your farm the other day, I am herewith summarising the main points of our conversation concerning the provision programming of the cropping and stocking of the farm for the coming year. Hilly Pierce, 20 acres. As this field is at present undersown with permanent grass, which is not looking very promising, it would be advisable to defer any decision concerning its treatment till after the harvest, when it would be possible to see whether the seeds are likely to develop into permanent pasture. 14 acres. This field would be admirably suited for barley in 1938, after the roots have been carted off. I would suggest that you should plough this field, and it would probably be satisfactory to leave it until the spring, then when the necessary cultivations for barley sowing would be carried out. A seedbed application for the following fertilisers would be advisable, provided none of the roots are folded with sheep on the same land. 200 weight per acre of super phosphates, 100 weight 30% of potash salts, and 100 weight of sulphate of ammonia. If you follow the normal procedure of the neighbourhood, it would be advisable to undersow the barley with temporary seeds, mixture of clover and grasses, to provide the hay crop in 1939. That's interesting. So you would plant the barley with a crop, which, when the barley dies out, you have another crop already coming up in the following season, which would be a hay crop, putting back nutrients into the earth. And that's interesting because I think they're going back to that. But I think after 1947, they were going for monoculture. Oh, here we are. Ryegrass. I've been reading about ryegrass in The Theft of the English Countryside. So this is very interesting to me. 21 acres. In view of the prominence of ryegrass on this field, it would be inadvisable to attempt to grow wheat because of the grave risk of attack by frit fly. Alternatively, therefore, you could grow sugar beet or spring barley. Either of these would be satisfactory, with suitable treatment in respect of cultivations and manuring. The field is admirably situated near the road for sugar beet carting, But I would call your attention to the fact that if you decide to grow beet, it will probably mean that either Fox, Covert or Hang High will have to grow a succession of 3 barley crops before they in turn can be cropped with roots, bearing in mind that it will be difficult indeed and advisable for you to attempt more than a maximum of 20 acres of roots per year. If however you decide to grow barley on this field, it should prove satisfactory, even if you adhere to the intention of applying and dressing of sewage sludge this autumn. But the application of additional farmyard manure would certainly not be necessary. Fox Covert, 20 acres. If this field is not cropped with roots, it should be quite suitable for barley, providing it received seabed application of 400 weight per acre of the same mixture as on 14 acres. Presumably it then be cropped with roots in 1939. High Hang, 22 acres. I'm afraid there's no alternative but to crop this again with barley in 1938, when it should receive the same dressing of artificials as on 14 acres. Hope this is not too dull and boring. How much more of this letter is there? Quite a bit. With regard to the manuring of the root crop, in addition to the application of farmyard manure or sewage sludge, a comparatively heavy dressing for artificials is justified. The following mixture should be satisfactory: 300 weight per acre of superphosphates, 200 weight of 30% potash salts, and 300 weight of nitrate soda. 800 weight per acre of this mixture would be justified for sugar beet or marrow stem kale, but the quantities would be reduced to 500 weight per acre for mangolds. With regard to the introduction of livestock onto the farm, I'm afraid your adherence to the idea of carrying a small herd of 4 to 5 cows only for the time being may lead to considerable surplus of roots during the coming winter. Consequently, if you still do not see your way clear to building up a herd of 20 to 25 cows, I think it would be advisable to obtain further stock to consume these roots. The buying of a bunch of young heifers for the ultimate enlargement of the herd in perhaps a year's time is a possible solution to the difficulty, and would no doubt prove far more satisfactory financially than attempting to fatten bullocks. I should be pleased to know whether you are likely to renovate the cowshed to accommodate a herd for hand milking, or whether you prefer to introduce a milking machine outfit. Before you commence any definite work for reconstruction or alteration on these premises, I should strongly advise you to submit your scheme for alterations for approval by the sanitary inspector of the district, particularly as you would no doubt wish ultimately to produce milk under the accredited or tuberculin test license. The granting of the tuberculin test licenses is dealt with directly by the country medical officer of health, and it would therefore be advisable for you to proceed with a scheme which would subsequently meet with his approval. In the Corn Hall on Saturday afternoon, I met an acquaintance of the marketplace, and he kindly offered to introduce me to a firm of merchants by a stand in the middle of the hall. I made up my mind to crop the 5 fields as follows: Hilly Pierce, with its complete failure of permanent grass, a bare fallow to kill the weeds. 14 acres, barley, with small seeds for 1939 hay. 21 acres, oats, 7 acres, barley. Oats 7 acres, barley 14 acres. Fox Covert, barley with small seeds in 10 acres, roots in 10 acres barley with small seeds 10 acres north, roots in 10 acres south. Hang High, barley and clover mixture for ploughing in next area. Is anybody still with me? Have you all nodded off? It's funny how he just gets so bogged down into the absolute detail, which I don't know how interesting this is. I mean, it is interesting, but it just, when you're reading it out loud, it seems less interesting. This would mean that 60 acres of barley, though some of it would be sown on land, which had grown barley previous season. Oh, I see. Sorry. This would mean, because when he said it would be grown on land, I thought, well, the rest can't be grown on water. But this would mean 60 acres of barley, although some of it would be sown on land which had grown barley the previous season. I didn't like doing it, but the heavy expenditure on the cottages had taken half of my capital. TurboStream, see, I told you, if I were right, it's right complicated, this farming, like. Yeah, telling me. Rather confusing at the moment. Yes, I know. He chops and changes. So that letter that I've just read out, which was advice he was... So, from what I understand, he's gone to the market hall and he's meeting all these stock people and what have you. And he switches back to advice he was given a year or so previously. And that was a letter that he had a year or so previously. And then he's contrasting that with what he's doing at the moment and basically ignoring all the advice that he's just been given, it seems to me, and doing something completely different. And he, by his own admission, he seems to be an incredibly stubborn individual who, no matter what people advise him, he doesn't take any heed of advice. And as a result, everything seems to go wrong. That's my understanding of Henry Williamson. Seems that he had more luck writing than farming, but we will see. The merchant had shown me a sample of seed barley he'd just bought. He shook it in the palm of his hand, holding it for me to inspect. I pretended to examine it, wondering what to say. Then I observed a seed amongst them which was longer and thinner than the barley grains and covered with hair. I see you've spotted a wild white oat, sir. There are just a few here and there. We'll dress them out, of course. I remembered from a lecture that I'd heard about weeds that the wild oat was a bad thing to get on the land, as it ripened before the other corn and shed its seeds for another year in the stubble. There were enough weeds already without buying any more. How much is it? How much, sir? Oh, just a moment. He consulted his partner. Delivered to you, sir, at the farm, 27 and 6 a coombe. We've just got the amount you want, actually. 45 coombe for 60 acres. Sounds like a con man to me. I pretended to examine it again. Sprat Archer yields a good sample usually, which the brewers like. I'll buy it then, but on condition that it's perfectly clean. Oh, you don't have to worry about that, sir. Oh, don't worry, it'll be done. Good. Now I want 24 acres of small seeds. For hay, sir, usual mixture suiting the district. Our number 1 mixture is what you require. £10 perennial ryegrass, £3 finest rich red clover, £2 single cut cowgrass, 7 shillings and threepence an acre. 24 acres, you said. Right, that's your order booked. Delivery at the farm. I have your address already. After thinking this over, I returned to the merchant's desk. I think I'll sow some different seeds in the top field, the hang high. I read in the stock breeder that a farmer in Bedfordshire brought back fertility quickly with white clover. The hang high, my steward tells me, had wheat in 1934, barley in 1935, sugar beet in 1936, and barley again last year, all without any muck. Now, it's going to be barley again this season. I think I'll sow seeds in it for ploughing in 1938, autumn, as I shan't have the new road made along the side of Hilly Peace, that steep thistle field by then, so I won't be able to cart any muck up there. The merchant, he took out a notebook and pencil, murmuring, I'll work out a mixture for you. Let's have a look. He gave me a piece of paper with the following written on it. Single cut cowgrass, £2. Allsike, £2. Ryegrass, not Italian, £7. The Italian ryegrass is what they would be planting. I've been reading about that Italian ryegrass, so not Italian ryegrass, £7. Red suckling, £2. Trefoil, £4. White clover, £2. Trefoil, presumably that's bird's foot trefoil. White clover, I think, is okay. I don't know what red suckling is. Single cut cowgrass. Ryegrass, not Italian, that's good. £19 per square acre. If Andrew Norris is listening, I think I saw Andrew Norris, he knows all these wildflowers and grasses. Is that a good mixture for him to be having on his farm? I don't know what Alsike is, Alsike. He calculated a minute. This will cost you 13 shillings an acre. How many acres? 21. Right then, that's the order booked. We'll deliver to the farm. Give us a chance to buy your barley, won't you, sir? I will. The details were entered into my farmer's diary. We said goodbye and I walked out of the hall almost with a sense of exultation and freedom that I had got it done. I can imagine a John Cleese type man as the "How, yes, sir, no worries about that, sir. We can certainly do that for you, sir. That's right, thank you so much. Manuel!" You can, exactly. Oh, yes, very, very nice. You can see John Cleese, can't you? Very tall, whippy, thin John Cleese. Oh, yes, sir, we can certainly do that for you. No problem at all, sir. Yes, a bit of ryegrass here, a bit of red rufer there. Be lovely for you, sir. All good, that's right. Come, quick, get it on for the man. Financial crucifixion, one farm each, line on the left. Yeah. Why didn't he go for the 22.6 for it? I don't know. Right, we're on chapter 28. The autumn before, let's hope this one makes a bit more sense. Duff Bugle salesman. Duff Budgie salesman. That parrot is a dead parrot. No, it isn't. That's not a dead parrot, sir. Oh, no, sir. Oh, we can certainly give you plenty of seeds here, you know, sir. Oh, yes, we can. We sell you seeds for your farm, no problem at all. How many seeds would you like? Hey, I can sell you seeds, sir. I can sell you loads of seeds. You just name them. We'll have them. Bit of Italian ryegrass? No problem at all. We've got loads of it, haven't we, Smithers? Yes, of course. What are you shaking your head for? We got loads of it. Bags and bags. You're not looking, are you, man? Look at the back there. Plenty of it. We have tons and tons of it. Yards by the yards. You'll be a very happy man if you buy from me, sir. You'll be a very happy man. Sorry, a bit of Monty Python there I think I slipped into. Anyway, chapter 28. All is experience. The autumn before I bought... Oh, yes, sir. Got me going now, you have. Very happy man if you buy from me, sir. Oh, you don't want to buy from over there. Oh, no, you don't want to buy from him. Him? Over there, sir? You don't want to buy from him. He doesn't know what he's selling. He hasn't a clue. He hasn't got the reputation we have. Oh, man and boy we have. Man and boy, sir. I know I haven't got any sons at the moment, but of course one day I might have them. Yes, I've been in the seed-selling business all of 2 months now, sir. 2 months. Long, that's nearly 60 days to you, sir. 60 long, hard days of understanding what seeds do what. And I can tell you, you bung them in the ground and they come up lovely. They really do. Anyway, the autumn before, I had bought 20 pullets at an auction for 4 shillings and threepence each, and had got 19 of them home. I've just read a sentence there. I have no idea what I've read because I was too busy trying to calm down from the nonsense that I've just been saying. Let me just start that again. The autumn before, I had bought 20 pullets at an auction, 4 shillings and threepence each, and had got 19 of them home. Well, what happened to the others? While packing them into a crate, one had escaped, and a gypsy boy of about 7 years had at once chased and snatched it and stuffed it into the crate behind his father's dilapidated car. I saw him do it, but when I got to the car, such a volume of self-defence propaganda met me that I thought it best to retire, lest a writ for libel and defamation of character be issued against me, or worse, a black eye. While the words of right righteous indignation from father, mother, uncle, and boy assailed me, every effort was being made to get the car started, and when it did, they drove bumpily away, clouds of blue smoke obscuring my white hen packed with the others in the crate on the carrier. It's funny, isn't it? You can remember back in the 30s, yes. Just keep him talking. I'll go and start the car. Have you let the clutch out? Come on. No, sir, we didn't take any of them plummets. We just, come on, will you hurry up? Check the carburetor, will you? Right, no, sir. Anyway, tally-ho, sir, tally-ho, old boy. I just visualise that sketch. It's no fun now, is it, with our modern cars? No fun at all. You get in the car and everything just works. Where's the fun in that? Where's the fun? I had a Morris 1000 when my first car was a Morris 1000, Morris Traveller, and I had the starting handle, and sometimes the starter motor wouldn't go. You could bash it with the starting handle, and that would get the thing to go. Pull out the choke, and but you could actually put the handle in and crank it up. You had to be careful when it did go. You made sure your hand wasn't on it, or that you've got the starter thing, because the kick could take your arm off. Anyway, they were good things. Hello, Dan. Nice to see you. You've missed Monty Python, and you've also missed a 1930s Will Hay film, more or less. Right. On the way home, I bought a sack of mixed corn, and having already bought some houses, set one up in the weedy paddock outside. Now, I don't know whether he's talking now in the current time, coming back from the seed hall, or whether this is part of the story that he's, he doesn't ever make it quite clear what is a reminiscence and what is current. So on the way home, I bought a sack of mixed seed corn, and having already bought some houses, set one up on the weedy paddock outside the granary. Okay, this is back to normal now. The pullets began to lay in the second week of November, and Anne noted over 600 eggs in her neatly kept book by Christmas, when Letitia took them over. We bought an incubator at a sale and 4 turkey poults, as the hen birds were called, and 1 stag bird in February. Letitia was to look after them. I read in the stockbroker about the value of inoculating the young birds against a liver disease, which had given turkey rearing a bad name. And in Norwich, one Saturday, when we went to market, we bought a hypodermic needle and serum. The cost would be about halfpenny a bird, and the big vein at the elbow of the wing was the place to inject. Just suddenly thought, when he talked about turkey rearing, is he Bernard Matthews? Suddenly went through my head. I nearly said Bernard Manning then, and that's a different person altogether. Slowly our farm was getting together, but I found no satisfaction in what little was achieved. The repairs had been done by contract. The new creosoted gates and posts stood where before the wreckage of broken wood lay half-ridden in the nettles. I had an uneasy feeling that most of the labour for these repairs would have to be paid by me. Once I'd suggested to Mr. Barkway that I should do the repairs myself, but he'd replied that if I did this, it might be argued that the work was amateurish and therefore would cost more if done by the contractor. Yet in putting in of the posts and hanging each gate, which had cost me £1 in labour by contract, whereas had I had 2 men to do this work, it would have only cost 6 shillings. Mr. Barkway paid another visit to the farm, this time to assess the claim for deterioration of the land. He saw the wretchedly small thistle straw stack from Hilly Pierce and advised burning, making a note to claim for its value. Also a claim for overcropping, saying that in the schedule made by Mr. Stubberfield, Hilly Pierce had been listed as layer or permanent grass, We walked once more round the fields and measured. The arbitrator would, he considered, allow a sum about equal to that of ingoing covenants, which was £285. The compensation for disturbance was £100, was offset already for the year's rent that was owing. Don't understand what you're talking about. I read in the Stockbreeder that a claim for compensation for disturbance can be made only if the rent is paid up promptly when the tenant quits, I said. The rent is not paid up. It's 3 months overdue. The Agricultural Holdings Act of 1923 is clear on that point. Surely we don't have to pay away a year's rent, I asked. It was arranged between Stubberfield and myself that the rent and compensation for disturbance should cancel one another out, replied Mr. Barkway. He said that the next step was to wait until they had appointed the arbitrator who would hear both sides of the case and then decide. His decision was final. I learnt that I must be represented by a solicitor as well as himself as valuer at the Court of Arbitration. Should he get in touch with my London solicitor, or would I prefer a local man? I thought of the slow London and North Eastern Railway service and Mr. Marjoribanks spending 2 days in coming and returning, and if there were any more expenses, I might have to have an auction before I began farming to pay for them. I thanked Mr. Barkway for his suggestion and said I'd let him know. Meanwhile, life in the new cottages was not easy for Letitia. When I returned after a long, cold day's ploughing, the small box-like room with its dusty concrete floor, which one soiled coconut mat lay across, gave no feeling of home. The washing up was done in a bowl against a wall, on one of the Jacobean oak antique tables I had bought with such exuberance following the literary success of the decade before. Splashes were visible on the wall and down the table legs. Children's toys, books, hats, boots and clothes lay about. The plaster on the new walls was cracked. The small cupboard doors by the hearth still bore the accumulated finger touches of previous tenancies. One day, coming home very weary, I refused food and set about scrubbing them with the feeling of a criminal who must remove the traces of his crime. The feeling of failure was always beset me when I was in that poor little room. The creative spirit of life was not in it. He does seem to have spent more money than he could possibly have had to begin with, and keeps spending money. Ah, has Mr. Marjoribanks had the operation yet? Oh dear. Ben Reeve says, I think the 1904 Dion Bouton in Bewley Motor Museum is possessed. Its starter handle mechanism has broken 8 wrists so far, I seem to remember. Has it indeed? Marvellous stuff. Right, how are we doing? Oh, we might make it to the end of this. It was time to fetch the seed barley. It had been sent by my request to a warehouse at Great Wordingham for dressing against a disease called stinking bunt. By rotating the seed in a drum with a salt of mercury, each grain became covered with a fine dust which was poisonous to any fungus spores which might be lodging in the wrinkles of its skin. Riding in the lorry beside Bob and his old terrier, Spot, who was having a ride as a treat, I felt satisfaction that I was going to fetch my first seed for the farm, made free from weed and disease by the care and precision of science. We drove to the warehouse, a modern building with many filled sacks standing neatly in rows, and wooden chutes and drums and slides between the floors. As we were hauling the first sack off a trolley with silent rubber wheels, the manager came from the office and said, "I suppose you know it's not clean seed. There's a lot of wild oat in it." Really? But the people I bought it from said that they would clean it before dispatching.
"Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Don't worry about that, sir. We'll certainly make sure there's none of that in it."
He opened a sack and he dipped his hand into it. "There's one, there's another one, and there's another one. It's difficult to weed the dress out. You see, it goes through the riddle of the barley. There's a lot of tail seed in that too." He dipped his hand in again and spread the seed, pushing a small dwarfed kernel aside. "That will only produce mouse-eared stuff, like breeding from congenital cripples." Yes, exactly. Isn't it possible to get the oat out? I believe there's a dressing machine which works on the principle of velvet-covered bands moving up an incline, of which the barley is shaken but the oat clings with its angular hairs. It's a German invention, but we haven't got one of those machines here. The best we can do is try and blow the oat out. It's lighter than the barley, but we can't guarantee a clean sample afterwards. One or two are bound to remain. Also, it will blow the mercury powder off the seed. Well, I seem to be buying my experience in the classic manner. How much does the mercury treatment cost? 1 shilling and sixpence a coombe, 40 coombe, £3. How much would it cost to blow out the oat? Well, I could do it for 9pence a sack, 30 shillings in all. Some of the seed will be lost, most of it tail though. That's advisable, is it? He nodded. Right, thank you. Will you do it? I'll deduct the cost and also the loss of weight. Thank you. You'll send me a statement and do it soon, and then I'll come for it. Right you are, sir. Well, we'll have it ready for you tomorrow evening. So Bob, Spot and I drove home again the way we came, through the decaying medieval narrow street town, and so to the long lane through the arable fields, the brown purple in the low sunset, over the water splash upmarked, up-bridged ford, and past other fields until we descended the hill and came to our own farm entrance. 2 days later I drove back that way again, this time alone, and brought back my 2 tons, 20 sacks, and returned along a new road to the cart shed, feeling almost a farmer. Not all of the wild oats were blown out, but the Norwich firm which had sold the seed had agreed to pay for the cost of cleaning, reluctantly. At first their spokesman had expressed surprise.
"Oh, I'm very surprised at that, sir. Very, very surprised."
Each time I do a different impersonation of the seed salesman, but there we are. But I wasn't going to give way, as I had 100 times more already in my life through sympathy with the little man who was trying to earn a living.
Just trying to earn a living, sir. Just trying to earn a living, you know, sir.
At first he had offered to allow 6pence an acre for roguing the wheat. I asked what that was and learnt that it meant a man or men walking through the corn, pulling off the wild oat sprays or awns which rose higher than the barley. It's interesting, the word awn, A-W-N-S. Somebody, a chap called Sid Bonkers, had made a remark in one of my YouTube videos. Amazing how you pick these things up as you do. And he said that there's often a crossword puzzle, barley, beard, 1 word, 3 letters. And the strand, or the ears, if you like, I suppose they're calling it the ears, aren't they? The strand is an awn, A-W-N, and there it is. It's been mentioned in the book. But surely this will mean
Yes, sir. We could walk through the field, sir, and pull it all out,
is basically what he's saying. But surely this will mean the barley being trodden down. Not if your men are careful, sir. Surely the stalks will grow very close together, and treading them down would be unavoidable. At my persistence, he sighed, his eyebrows raised, as though to show extreme patience with a rather tiresome customer who had bought very little seed. "Now look here, sir,"
We all get out of this. All we get out of this deal is sixpence a coombe. I assure you that such a little amount of oat, as was the sample we sold you, would be disregarded by 95 farmers out of 100. You know, sir. Well, I must be the 100th, I'm afraid. Here's the report of cleaning. Dressing blown down. Stuff comes to 20 combs, 10 stones, £4. Additional loss is £23. This may be mercury powder. I relied on your word, you know. I relied on your word, you know. So he took another line. Now look here, sir, we don't want to fall out on such a little matter. We want your custom again next season. Look, we'll buy your barley, oat or no barley, next winter. Now, would you consider that fair for all the dressings? You say what you'll give us for them, we'll wash your hands. You say what you'll give us for them, and we're in your... I can't read now. Am I near the end? Very near the end. That was awkward. I knew the dressings were mostly wild oat, little barley kernels and grey mercury powder. They were good for nothing. They can be washed and fed to the hens, you know, sir. But they might poison the hens. Really, I don't want them. Nor do we, sir. So name your price, sir. I felt my resistance going. Weakly, I heard myself saying 20 shillings a coombe. Right you are, sir. And we'll esteem the chance of buying your barley next harvest. Outside the corn hall, I felt I'd been silly to pay £10 a ton for rubbish, but I was tired, and I'd offered to buy them out of superciliousness, while inwardly furious with the petty bourgeois persistence of the fellow. Buy my barley, would he? What for? 5 bob a coombe, including the wild oats in it? I'm going to finish there because I am struggling now. There's a few pages left to go, but we'll get to that tomorrow. I don't want to get myself all tied up. Anyway, there we go. So it just reminded me of an incredible... I've been reading different books over the weekend, and it just reminds me how in such detail, it's almost too much detail. It's fascinating from a piece of social, whatever you would call it, history, social historian doing. You could do an impression of Norman Stanley Fletcher. He did a lot of porridge. Oh yes, that's true. Norman Stanley Fletcher. All right, Mr. Barraclough. What was this? Fletcher. I really don't think it's a good idea, Fletcher. All right, Fletcher. Fletcher. Come on out, Fletcher. Governor wants to see you, Fletcher. Okay, the new. He was doing all that with his... Come on, Fletcher. Not you, Godpa. Godpa, you stay here. Richard, we can have a W.C. Fields salesman impression, please. W.C. Fields is from the chop house. I'll send you the seeds. Don't you worry. I just have to watch some W.C. Fields to get into that. I'll get this. The red ball in the white pocket. It has the black ball in the white pocket, followed by the red ball. I've got it here somewhere. Going down the chop house. W.C. Fields. We have seeds, all sorts of seeds. Some seeds, good seeds. Oh dear. Worrying is the use of mercury, chloride and calomel. Stop club root amongst brassicas, but also used as a laxative once. Dr. Benjamin Rust's so-called thunderbolts. Oh, nasty. Soup for tea then, Ed Loud. Looks like everything goes wrong on the new farm. My goodness me, very well read. I struggled a bit today, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. Stevie Wonder could see that coming. They don't get in touch with... they could get it... that's something else. Brilliant. Greasy salesman indeed, yeah. How, just can't imagine that people could be so ignorant. But hey-ho. Anyway, tomorrow we'll carry on reading, and hopefully I'll read a little bit better than today, just getting back into the mould.
If you have a suggestion for the next book, always interested in that. Got the Vogue show tonight. Lots of stuff has come in for that, so that should be good. Interested to see what Andrew Norris's thing is, theme and video and blah blah blah. So there we go. Catch up with you very soon. Take care. Thank you for the WC. I have to go and reread him. Rewatch him. Hamilton Fields. Oh dear, oh dear. Right. Catch you later. Thank you for watching. Bye for now. Bye bye.